Thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's so funny. We just came down today. I think we came down for coffee, and you saw the setup. And I like just throwing out, "Hey, Cody," I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sounds good." That was a few hours ago.
Yeah, I bumped into a clip you posted on LinkedIn there, and I was like, "Oh, Dave's doing this too. I forgot about that. I'm gonna have to check that out."
I can never have enough attention, Cody. Well, we know each other as neighbors, of course, but not everyone knows you that well. So usually I just ask you if you don't mind, just go back as far as you want to go and do a little introduction. Who's Cody?
He's Cody. So, I came from central British Columbia, near a town called Smithers.
Love it.
Yeah, so beautiful, beautiful country up there. Um, my dad was a logger and then shifted into carpentry. He blew his back out when I was young, and so that area is supported from, logging, a little bit of mining, and a little bit of tourism. So we talked about it as a kind of a mesh of hippies and rednecks and, the indigenous peoples up there
Mm-hmm.
somehow getting along. And so I grew up, yeah, along, the watershed of the Bulkley Valley, Skeena River,
Hmm.
and then grew up into kind of carpentry and construction, and then found my way into the electrical arena. Did my apprenticeship in BC, first and second years there, and um, I really had very little direction coming out of high school, and it was just me finding purpose. I think
Hmm.
it did a lot for me to have that. So from Central BC, do a little bit of residential and commercial work. I moved into industrial,
Hmm.
so there was better work, better opportunity as a kid,
Hmm.
to move into the oil patch, and so I just packed up, had relatives in Edmonton, and can I stay with you and work there? And so I moved into the oil and gas, and then worked in Coal Lake, I think was one of the first sites, some Sonova stuff and so on. So it was a quite a transition to go from walking on, the roof beams of houses as a carpenter's kid to the safety and the tie off and all the safety of the industrial industry.
How old were you when you moved to Edmonton?
It's probably 21.
Where's the kid?
Yeah. So that was it was a lot of fun, and it kind of it's quite a transition going into industrial sites. So the pros and the cons of that, you get used to it, and when you're younger and you don't have a wife and kids, it's less relevant. And then preaching to the choir, but as you get older, there's more value in being around Wilmot quite a bit more. But I was lucky to work on really large sites. A background in carpentry, it was easy to transition into the tools, cable tray, the simple stuff.
Hmm.
It was valuable for me because I could given independent tasks to kind of to work on stuff, and it helped my career a lot.
How did you end up down in Calgary?
So I had done my first 2 years, one in Prince George and one at North Island College on Vancouver Island. And then as I'd worked in out of Edmonton, I decided to visit a friend who was in Calgary at the time, and I came down in the summer and I go, this is incredible. I need to move there.
Awesome.
And so I ended up doing my third and fourth year at SAIT
Oh, amazing.
of the apprenticeship. And then later I did a design certificate, electrical design, and the master's ticket there. And then decided after about 10 years that I wanted to transition from on the tools. The learning curve had flattened out. I
Hmm.
kind of understood projects better, that I wanted to get into the engineering world. And so I did drafting and design for about a decade after that, but then bounced around to the tools once in a while when things got slow.
Wait on. Is your family still out in Smithers?
Yes, I have my parents are there, and I have a younger brother who's in Devon, just actually north of Devon, just west of Edmonton.
How often do you get to Smithers?
It's usually about once a year, but things have slowed down with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're planning to go up this year, and my parents are excited to see my children. So yeah, it's good
It's
to get up there.
it's funny. I spent a lot of time going through Smithers on a pipeline we were working on back in 2012 through 15. And the whole area, it's so beautiful. And I just kind of fell right in love with it. But when we were going through there, I think there was no a lot of no pipeline signs when we first started about 2012, 2013. And by the time we got through there, 2015 or so, a lot of say yes to job signs in Smithers. So it was actually a neat little turnaround I got to witness over a 3 year period.
Yeah, and the era that I grew up in, like as a kid, when my dad worked in logging, we had NAFTA that came in,
Mm-hmm.
and with their taxes and stumpage fees, they leveled an industry of the north. And BC's, I would say, is still has this kind of massive separation from the Lower Mainland, Vancouver, and that area, and the north. It's might as well be two different countries,
But different cultures completely.
completely different cultures, and it's from the central and north part of the province. It there feels like hypocrisy on the voting population. That's the majority
Mm-hmm.
down there that's making decisions for the province, and them not fully understanding the impacts and the lifestyle. And there's a lot of poverty there because of the lack of work. But it is a beautiful place, and everyone just hopes that tourism will carry the weight. And there's a lot of kind of culture. We had being younger and working on the tools, there was a term, you're on the EI ski team,
Mm-hmm.
which would be you'd work in the summer, get laid off, and then you'd buy a season's pass, and you work until you ran out of employment insurance, and then go back to work again. So yeah, it's part of the culture in a way.
Was there a difference between when you were a younger guy in terms of any oppositions to resource development back then, or were you not aware of it compared to what you see now out there?
I think the provinces have a lot of separation. Like we have our own senses of identity and perspectives, but they're very like there's a mountain range between the center of BC and Alberta, and then from here, it's just as different as Alberta to Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So they have perspectives on the energy industry, and I think Alberta's been painted, with this broad strokes on making money, making oil, and sending pollution up into the air.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time, and for that part of the country to understand like what the innovation on emission reductions, tier programs, and like what all these things are doing actively. It's very technical,
Mm-hmm.
and it's slow to kind of communicate that. People see pipelines as just moving pollution around. Alberta shifted to methane because it's a lower emission fuel.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is we need energy. People need to drive to work. People need to keep their lights on and their heat in the winter. And that's kind of the best tool for that. There's these perspectives that, well, we can just replace all of that with solar, wind power.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of unknowns, like population-wise, if you compare Ontario to Alberta, per population, we're between about 2.5 to 3 times as much solar and wind as that province has. But we're painted not as a renewable province, we're painted as an oil and gas. So we're very much energy sector here. And British Columbia, that is blessed with topography
Mm-hmm.
for hydropower, it's a lot easier, as like the two provinces are separated based on watershed, essentially through the mountains. So they have access to like an abundance of electricity. But with population growth, Alberta is now facing these rolling blackouts.
Mm-hmm.
Power demand is coming up. So
I wonder what that looks like when Site C comes online with all that electricity coming out of that. I wonder.
yeah, that will change things. I'm not sure on their timelines to run all the power grid through Quebec.
Yeah, I'm
I
not.
think that's years out.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting project. I remember even talking to Newey because he was on about that because he's from Ontario, and he said, we don't have the luxury of all this massive hydro projects that Quebec and Ontario has. And I said, yeah, it's funny. I just finished reading a book by Alex Epstein, and he doesn't call them non-renewables. He calls them non-reliable because he says it's a moral case, like we need reliable energy for so many different reasons, include not just hospitals and getting people driving around and stuff, but it's definitely it's a lot more of a complex argument than the people on social media at times would like to make it.
Yeah, and you'd also be aware about hydrogen. Like hydrogen has been the sexy catchphrase. Hydrogen, hydrogen, hydrogen. We're gonna fix all our problems with it. And I see, first of all, people think of hydrogen as the fuel source when it should be thought of as the battery,
Mm,
because hydrogen has to come from somewhere. We can make it from electrolysis, which is a great idea. Take solar, you can do green hydrogen, take solar power and then transform water
mm,
and make hydrogen run your car. Okay, all our problems go away, except for we're using up water, which is a limited resource.
mm,
The efficiency of solar electricity to hydrogen is somewhere, I want to say it's around 60, 70%, whereas the EVs are in the summer are running closer to 90,
mm,
and the winters are, maybe lower than 60% efficient. But it uses up multiple resources, hydrogen, and the other piece of that is the small molecule. Like you already know about hydrogen embrittlement.
mm,
Pipeline, steel pipe doesn't work well with it.
mm.
Some of the plastics do better, but it will basically get through pipe. So once it gets through that, it'll go to atmosphere. And I think it's scaled at about 11 times worse of a greenhouse gas than CO2. So it's this wonderful green power, but it's a worse greenhouse gas if it leaks to atmosphere. So if you run in a combustion engine, you'll get what's called slip. Sorry, I forget the term. Slip through or slip, and it's basically uncombusted gases that get to atmosphere. It's 11 times worse than CO2.
Mm.
So there's a place for it, but it's not a feature that will fix everything. It's a form of energy, and there are wells that are producing hydrogen, but it's a catchphrase that's sexy until people realize that we need, if you have to put all the pipe in the ground to create this network for it, filling stations and so on, it's just so much energy that it's counterproductive.
Yeah, like when I talk to people, because everyone knows I'm a pipeline guy, I say, I think there's a space for so many different types of energy, and including non-renewables, including renewables. It's not one silver bullet for them all. An example I always see is in Costa Rica and what they do with their climate. But how do you compare a country like Canada with Costa Rica in terms of the amount of sun they get and long distances we're driving in cold weather? I think there's a time and place for everything, and I'm assuming technology in the free market will find the best solution over time.
Agreed. And California, EVs will work great in California with solar and so on. In the Alberta environment, our grid, which gets a lot of power from natural gas and other many forms of power, in our winters here, they're cold enough that if you have an EV battery, the same EV that you drive in California, will easily lose 25% efficiency because you're getting electricity off a grid from natural gas and renewables. But in the winter, a lot more natural gas and coal. The actual mileage that you get in an EV can be more emissions than a really fuel efficient RAV4.
Just recharging it?
Well, charging it, you're taking power off the grid, which is burning natural gas and maybe coal. So there is emissions coming from that. So the metric you use is megawatt hours or kilowatt hours, and you have emissions rate per megawatt hours off that. And you can actually do the math on this is how much gas my vehicle will burn in the winter. And this is how much, electricity it takes. And this is the emissions, and this is a reduction. And you can compare that below minus 25, minus 30. A fuel efficient RAV4 or Kia or Nissan will have less emissions.
Interesting.
So,
But even the EV is like everyone wants to make that either. If you're EV, you're kind of, I guess, oil and gas industry. And I don't even think it's that simplistic, because I know a lot of oil and gas guys, we went to buy a new truck there, whatever it was, a year or two ago, and it wasn't that much more to get a hybrid plug-in. We're like, oh yeah, for sure, sounds good. So we did that. So I just think it's a neat technology, and I'm about as pro Canadian energy as you'll find.
well, then I think we get this misnomer that Alberta Energy is oil and gas, and it's not. It's no, we're an energy hub looking at all things, and so the hybrid model makes more sense where you can do both gas
Mm.
and EV. There's applications for both. I mean, if everyone's got room in a garage for both, that's great. You can kind of reduce, but um, it's hard to have a fleet of vehicles for the application too. So we kind of do the best we can and look at that.
It's funny to hear this coming from you because, again, having spent so much time on Smithers, I was very aware of the anti kind of resource development community out there, and I definitely felt that. And having that be your home and you being counter to that is very interesting for me.
Yeah, I'm often on the other side of the table with the opposite perspective as my parents when we get into those conversations.
Oh, interesting.
But I think they're starting to come around. And with this pipeline that was stopped by hereditary peoples, there's a lot of perspective that's changed there. And although I think we see benefit to the country for having access to bringing green fuels to foreign markets, there's a lot of politics at play. And out, outside of this recording, there's other conversations that can be had about that head off into conspiracy tensions and so on. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting. I like it'd be hard for me to talk to you and not bring up Shauna Holmes because she's also from Smithers,
yeah,
and she's gonna come sit down with me, I think, in a few weeks. And not only is she pro energy, I think she's president of the Calgary Women in Energy group.
which is great. Yeah,
Like such a wonderful advocate group for women in energy and STEM, and just a powerful group. But I just have a lot of time for her, and you and her have very similar opinions when it comes to the Canadian energy industry.
interesting. Well, I think we need to communicate, do our part, and talk about these things, and not to win an argument or to fool someone into making a statement and then blasting them, but like it's just like, hey, this is how I see things.
Mhm.
Throw a counter opinion or ask a question or all do the same, and kind of work together to understand what's the best path. Because despite all the input we have in the media, there's no clear path forward. There's just a lot of opinions that are serve for argument fuel.
That's such a shame. I talked to, I can't remember who it was, a friend recently, and we talked about, yeah, constructive dialogue, unfortunately, is dead. Everyone is so hesitant to give up an inch of their position for fear they'll show a gap to the other team, and it's such a pity. It's such a pity.
People have bought into you're on this tribe or that, and I'm here to winning. It's like, no, let's split this into arguments or debates. I'm not interested in an argument. I'm here for a constructive and respectful debate. I'm okay with being wrong.
Oh, you might learn something.
Well, one day.
Yeah. I'm going back a ways now, but I remember talking to Marie a long time ago, 10 years ago now, and someone we knew put on their Facebook wall, they're like, yeah, you're voting for Stephen Harper, unfriend me or something. I thought, oh, like that's too bad. Seeing that kind of stuff that I don't want to say would end a friendship, but that's kind of the insinuation. It was just disappointing to see when I look at Canadian politics and politics in the US right now. It's not gotten better. I think it's gotten worse.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we just need to bring more awareness to that. Despite having dissimilar beliefs, we should still be community and still be Canadians or still be a same team.
Like that community. What was your experience of Boness before and after the club's flood in terms of community feeling?
Okay.
I'm changing gears.
Yeah, we are shifting. I like it. So that was 2013. It's 2024, so we're about 11 years now. I think we lived there a year or two, a couple of years before the flood happened. And so in that community, we're on a street that's along the river, and there's a bit of separation. The homes along the river are a digit more expensive than the ones across, and so there's this kind of a social economics. So we had, we got along with neighbors okay, but we're very, talked to a few neighbors, didn't know everybody. And then the flood happened, and we were all in this disaster aftermath and gutting basements out and tearing out drywall and, taking your washer and dryer and furnace out to the street for the city to remove it. And everyone is just in chaos. You could see older people pulling out these photo albums that were just mud, nothing left of them, these relics that they had very important to them, and they're just broken by throwing this all away. And then what happened is everyone reached out, like, how can I help you with what you're dealing with, and so on. It was amazing. We had a huge volunteer energy that came in from the city that you're well aware is just people would show up and, okay, how do we help? We're gonna, we have a team of people. We're gonna take drywall and this out, and so will help you go through and rinse off your valuables, and you can take pictures to document for insurance. So we just had this incredible force. People were there early and stayed there late. People that didn't have a skill set for dealing with home demo were just there flipping hot dogs and bringing in, donated beer in the evening for volunteers. So it was incredible, and we had this sense of community afterwards. We've had a Neighbor Day celebration most years after to say thanks, and it brought the community together. And then we got to meet neighbors all across the street, first name basis, and we're over someone's house for pizza that we wouldn't have otherwise. So there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of appreciation, a lot of love for the community. It totally changed it from one thing into something beautiful.
I suppose that probably happens with a lot of significant events, whether it's communities or countries. Like was listening to one of Rogan's things, a podcast not even that long ago, and they were talking about even on 9/11. And a guy was out in California, and George W. Bush wasn't that popular and stuff, but holy shit, man. After 9/11, that whole event pulled that whole country together, including California. And he goes, you look around, all you see is American flags and people engaging each other that normally wouldn't on the streets, and strangers. He said it just galvanized the whole country for months after, eventually dissipating, go back to the way it was or the way it is now. But he said there was you could feel it, and I would say Bowness would be the exact same.
It's really interesting. It's too bad we need disasters to to get to really appreciate each other, eh?
Yeah, disappointing. I don't know what that says about mankind, actually.
I have to wag my finger at just people in general, but yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of good that comes out of that too.
Do you guys see yourself as a family being in Calgary long term?
Well, I think so. We're lucky. For our location, we're close to post-secondary education locations, and it'll be easier for my kids to work, be at home and do that. So I can see that happening. I've kind of been around this province and into other ones for work a lot, but I do also appreciate growing and kind of living in more rural locations.
Okay.
So I wouldn't mind, out towards Millerville or somewhere else one day, but we'll see. It's all about with the kids.
Gonna break my heart if you move out of Bowness, Cody.
Well, I had to be over more for a beer, I suppose, regardless then.
Right on.
Yeah.
So what do you see after the energy industry? In the future. What are you guys doing once you're not working anymore?
Once I'm done?
Yeah.
So I really like automotive projects. I had a Toyota Land Cruiser that was written off not too long ago. I have now a 1962 Lincoln Continental.
That's amazing.
Lap side with the suicide doors that I'm working on. Going to do a motor swap and everything. So I really like automotive. I like building things. One thing actually I was talking about with my younger brother on the phone today was what we should be focused on the energy industry in Alberta is fires and drought.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
I'm going to shift.
Oh shit, shift away.
But so if you look at the drought map, there's a drought map, and it shows extreme drought areas for the US. And if you look at the one for Canada, they're done in the same format by the same source. And you realize that central and northern Alberta has worse drought than anywhere in the US. You know, there's lots of fires and lots of evacuations over the last year. Alberta, like, while we're being more intelligent about emissions and green energy, we need to focus a little bit more on water usage, water reduction. California, that's dealt with droughts and water shortages, does things like in apartment buildings, they'll take the water from your shower, which is gray water, and they'll run it through filtration, and they'll use it to flush toilets. So you can decrease your water usage and that water to the septic treatment plants, facilities. So I think Alberta's kind of pushed back because we've had enough water, but we've had such a huge influx of growth that we're not meeting the needs or demands for the population. So I think we need to transition into, first, for the drought, water reduction for especially high density apartments, high density residential, and then also look at, for fire response, doing municipal agreements or intermunicipal agreements. So if Slave Lake or Peace River or Okotoks or whoever has to evacuate for a fire, you have to displace that many people in minutes. Like, if you remember what happened in Fort McMurray.
Oh, for sure. I think we all do.
Yeah. So like there's no planning, and that could be worse. I think what we need to do is push municipal committees, like go to the town hall meetings and so on, and say, well, what is this community going to do in a situation where there's a fire? Because there's going to be towns with fires. We could be receiving 10,000 people, in August, like, that are displaced and have nowhere to go. So we need to figure out how to manage, the bowling alley, swimming pool, like, into temporary housing. We need to have kind of counter agreements. So, we say this community is designated to take so many people in the situation, and trying to accommodate, and then have that offered, in response. So create these agreements where in the situation of fire or flood or ice storms, where, maybe the community's out of power, where we can facilitate better evac and response. For you or I, it's not too bad if we load up our vehicles with personal belongings and go, but there's going to be someone down the street without a car and 2 kids, and everyone's vehicle is going to be full, and there's preventable, risks that are significant and preventable with a bit of foresight.
Like, I think in general, I would say most people don't even think about these kind of things. I say that because I admit I don't really think about them at a larger scale, say at the provincial level. I just assume some of these emergency plans are in place. I know that's super naive and very hands off of me, but that's my assumption. But even as our family goes, do we have a plan as a family to, if shit hits the fan tomorrow, how do we connect and communicate? And I admit I don't think we do.
When we were younger, I remember in elementary school, your school pushes you as kids to, like, oh, you need to go home and look at your fire detector and have your mom check the battery, and then talk about how you would crawl and open the door handle, and when do you climb out of your elementary school. Came up with this idea, like, children need to do this, and we went home and told our parents all about the risks and how to plan, and where was our meeting place, and what was the number, and we created these plans. It was a great thing to implement. But our municipalities, with broad strokes, I'm going to say, aren't. And we should be asking them, what are we doing? I've reached out to the bigger entities politically in this province, and the response is like, it's not for us. You have to go to your municipalities and do that. And so, if anything, I'd like to see some work done in kind of creating community lighthouses. So if we have a building, maybe something we want to do is look at something like a cogen, like combined heat power units. So if the power is off, as things happen with fires, that we still have telecom. These places still have running water. they could create their own power on site in a green way, and make revenue from it.
Mm.
Maybe there's tax write-offs or benefits for either municipal infrastructure or for commercial that say, hey, we're willing to turn our department store into temporary housing for people in this situation.
Mm.
And I think there's opportunities that could even save lives for sure.
Interesting. You remind me of the story. So this would be last, I think it was last, I want to say November. I hope I'm getting the date right. So we were Marie and I were in the kitchen, the kids were upstairs, and our phones did that emergency alert all at the same time. So, everyone looks at their phones, and the kids rock down the stairs, and we're all staring at the same message that says, Summit was in a collision or something. Emergency services have been called. So instantly, so Marie's looking, what is it? I said, I don't know. And the kids came down, little kids, hey, Summit's not here. Did you go? Yeah. So I quickly phoned, obviously panic mode because the uncertainty of not knowing in that moment. So I phoned Summit and he picked up. First thing he said was, hey, Dad, there was an accident. I'm okay. Oh, where are you, babe? I'm up Edgemont Boulevard and whatever the street was. Don't move. Trek and I'll be right there. Trek and I crawled in the truck, went up to see him. Bad snowstorm, blah, 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 blah. And so he was in, just driving, had the dash cams, the foot, and we could see the person sliding down the road. And bless them, from Ontario, no snow tires, just moved there 2 weeks earlier. And she took total ownership for the incident. Nobody was hurt, thank God. But his new truck was wrecked, blah, 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 blah. So I'm fascinated by, how did this happen? Is this iPhone or is it I don't understand. He's like, oh yeah, Dad, you go into your health settings, you could set up your emergency services and if anything ever happened. So the phone detects that I was in a collision and it goes and does its business phones.
Wow, that's wild.
I thought so too. So we got together as a family and everyone got up their iPhones and we set up the same system. So if it ever happens, this is how smart these phones are. For good or for bad, I know a lot of people don't really like it because the Big Brother thing, but in that instance, pretty wild. So even if he wasn't responsive, the phone was going to call emergency services to his location, and it kept shooting us a ping every couple minutes, 2-3 minutes.
Oh wow.
Until we turned it off. So we always knew where his phone was, and he was just waiting there.
It's interesting, and I'm realizing I brought up these safety things. I've gone through so many H2S courses.
Oh, likewise.
So many first aid,
Yeah.
so many fall arrests, so many of these that you've become wired in a way to always look for the risk and look for the counter. I'll usually in it talking about the fire thing and having that plan. We talk about it as what's seatbelt good for? You never use it. You put it on all the time, but you never use it. What's good is it? Because we both know that it's important that one day, for your child, suddenly it was important. But we get used to if you don't have a seatbelt on all the time, you don't create that mindset, and we're wired, especially in electrical, excuse the pun, to look for the risk, the stored energy, and so on, because there's incidents in the industrial.
Oh, for sure. But even you as a parent, even set good examples for your daughters, because they're watching. Put on your seatbelt. They're watching. I know you wouldn't do this, but if you were texting and drive, they see that stuff. So it's so important to set an example. But right now, whether it's seatbelts or wearing a helmet while you're snowboarding, we all do it. I'm going to say almost out of habit. It's so the norm now. And everyone does it, so we do it. We're back in the day. That wasn't the case. The kids wear helmets, the adults did. Now everyone does, basically.
Yeah, after my rollover, definitely appreciate helmets dealing with the concussion stuff. So
yeah, that was a wild. Good pictures, by the way.
Yeah, it was about as much room for my fist from the top of the door and the top of the window on the driver's side. So
yeah,
I got lucky there. Yep. Well, anything else you want to cover? Or?
No, that's about it. I just appreciate you making time for me and sitting down, and it's good to know you're thinking about moving to the Broness. Bonus break my heart already.
Oh no,
But,
that won't be for a while. You'll have a lot of me still.
all right, well, let's get off camera, and I want to hear some of the other stories you're talking about, the conspiracy theories.
Thanks. All right, you can turn her off.
All right, thanks, brother.